3 months had passed since the broadcast, and Jake stood on the observation deck of the newly established peace station and watched as human and elven ships docked side by side, and the war was officially over, and both sides had agreed to investigate the conspiracy and punish those responsible, and Admiral Cross was still missing. But his allies had been arrested and their crimes exposed. Princess Lily joined him at the window, and her dragons flew lazy circles around the room, and they had grown larger in the past months and now were the size of medium dogs, and their scales shimmered with health and contentment. "It is strange to see our ships together without weapons firing," and she said quietly. Jake nodded, "And I never thought I would see it," and he looked at her. "And your people want you to return and to take your father's throne?" "Yes," and she smiled sadly, "and the 7th house needs a leader, but I have been away from politics for so long, and I do not know if I am ready." "You stopped a war," and Jake said, "and I think that qualifies you for leadership." She laughed, and it was a sound he had grown to love over the past months, and perhaps, "But what about you, Commander? And what will you do now?" Jake had been asking himself the same question, and the human military had offered him a promotion and a medal, and a position training the next generation of officers, but it all felt hollow somehow, and he had spent 3 years fighting a war that should never have happened, and he was not sure he wanted to be part of the military anymore. "I don't know yet," and he admitted, "and maybe I'll become a traitor and fly around the galaxy and avoid responsibility." Princess Lily touched his hand, and her fingers were warm. "And you would be terrible at avoiding responsibility, and you are too honorable for that." Before Jake could respond, Captain Monica Hayes' voice came through the communication system, and "Commander Morrison and Princess Lily, please report to conference room 7, and we have a situation." They hurried through the station corridors, and her dragons followed, and they entered the conference room and found Captain Hayes standing with several human and elven officials, and on the screen was a map showing the outer colonies. Captain Hayes gestured to the map, "And we have a problem. And several colonies have reported strange ships in their space, and not human and not elven, and something else entirely." "What kind of ships?" And Jake asked. "Unknown," and one of the elven officials said, and his name was Commander Theron, and he had been working with the peace delegation, and they do not respond to communication, and they scan our worlds and then disappear, and we have been trying to track them, but they are too fast, Princess." Lily studied the map, and her expression was serious. "And how many colonies have reported these ships?" 12 in the past month. And Captain Hayes said, "And all of them are on the frontier and far from our core worlds, and we think they are exploring and looking for something, or looking for weakness," and Jake said, "And testing our defenses." Commander Theron nodded. "And that is our fear. And now that the human and elven war is over, we may face a new threat, and a threat neither of us is prepared for, alone." Princess Lily looked at Jake and then at the others. "And then we do not face it alone, and we face it together, and humans and elves united." The room was quiet, and then Captain Hayes smiled, "And I was hoping you would say that. And because we are forming a joint task force and a team to investigate these unknown ships, and we want you both to lead it." Jake looked at Princess Lily, and she looked back at him, and her dragons chirped excitedly, and they seemed to sense adventure ahead. "What do you say, Commander Morrison?" and she asked, "And one more mission together." Jake thought about returning to normal life and about flying cargo ships and avoiding responsibility. And then he thought about exploring unknown space with someone he trusted, and with a purpose that mattered, and he smiled. "I say yes," and he turned to Captain Hayes, "And when do we leave tomorrow?" And she handed them data pads with mission details, "And you will have a crew of both humans and elves, and the best ship we can provide, and your mission is to find these unknown vessels and determine if they are a threat, and if possible establish communication." Princess Lily read through the data and raised an eyebrow. "And it says here that I will be the diplomatic officer, and Jake will be the military commander, and we are equals in authority, Captain." Hayes nodded. "And you both stopped a war together, and we figure you can handle first contact together. And besides, your dragons seem to like Commander Morrison, and that has to count for something." One of the dragons landed on Jake's shoulder and nuzzled against his neck, and Jake reached up to scratch under its chin, and the creature purred like a cat. Jake had learned their names over the past months, and this one was Ember, and the other was Spark, and they were not pets but partners. And they had saved his life multiple times, and he had grown fond of them. The meeting ended, and Jake and Princess Lily walked back to their quarters, and they had been given adjacent rooms on the station and spent most evenings talking and sharing stories. Princess Lily stopped at her door and turned to face him and Jake. "I need to tell you something, and before we leave on this mission." He waited, and his heart beating faster. "Was supposed to hate you," and she said softly, "And you are human, and my brothers died fighting humans, and I was supposed to see you as the enemy, but instead I found someone honorable and someone brave and someone who reminds me why my father believed peace was possible. Jake stepped closer, and I was supposed to hate you too, and you are an elf, and your people killed my brother. But instead I found," and he paused and searching for words, "and I found someone I trust, and someone I admire, and someone I cannot imagine facing the future without." Her dragon suddenly flew between them and chirped loudly and spun in excited circles, and Princess Lily laughed, and I think they approve. Jake smiled. "And what about you? And do you approve?" She reached up and touched his face, and her hand was gentle, and yes, Commander Morrison and I approve very much. They stood close, and the station hummed around them, and somewhere in the darkness of space unknown ships prowled, and tomorrow they would begin a new mission and a new chapter, but right now in this moment everything felt right. The next morning they boarded their new ship, and it was called the Unity, and the name seemed appropriate, and the crew was waiting, and 15 humans and 15 elves, all chosen for their skills and their willingness to work together. Lieutenant Karen Walsh was there, and she had requested transfer to the mission, and Jake was glad to have her. And there were engineers and scientists and pilots and soldiers, and all of them looked nervous but determined. Jake stood before them and gave a speech, and he was not good at speeches, but he tried. And 3 months ago, humans and elves were enemies, and we killed each other because we believed lies and because powerful people wanted us to fight, but now we know the truth, and now we have a chance to build something better, and something based on trust instead of fear. Princess Lily stepped forward, and her dragons perched on her shoulders, and this mission will be dangerous, and we do not know what we will find in the frontier. But whatever we face it together. And humans and elves as one crew and one purpose. The crew cheered, and the sound echoed through the ship, and Jake felt hope rise in his chest. They launched from the station and headed toward the outer colonies and toward the unknown ships and toward whatever future waited for them. And Jake sat in the command chair, and Princess Lily sat beside him, and her dragons flew through the ship, making friends with the crew. As the stars stretched past the windows, Jake thought about his father, and about how proud he would be, and thought about his brother Daniel, and hoped he would understand. And mostly, he thought about the woman sitting next to him and about the adventures they would share. The war was over and peace had begun, but the universe was vast and full of mysteries, and somewhere out there in the darkness, new challenges waited, and Jake Morrison and Princess Lily Nightshade and their crew of humans and elves would face them together, and that made all the difference. The Unity jumped to hyperspace and disappeared into the stars, and behind them they left the old hatreds and the old wars, and ahead of them lay hope and discovery and the promise of tomorrow. The transport shuttle descended through gray clouds that hung over the small town, like a blanket of forgotten memories. Danny Carter pressed his face against the window, watching the familiar streets grow larger as the vehicle dropped altitude. 14 years had passed since he left this place. 14 years of serving on distant stations and patrolling the outer rim of human space. Now at 32 years old, he was finally coming home. But home looked different than he remembered. The main street that once bustled with activity now seemed quiet and worn. Buildings that had been freshly painted in his youth now showed peeling walls and faded signs. The park where he used to play as a child sat empty, with overgrown grass reaching up past the rusty swings. The shuttle landed at the small spaceport on the edge of town, and Danny grabbed his single duffel bag. Everything he owned fit into that one bag. 14 years of life compressed into military-issued clothing and a few personal items. He stepped onto the landing pad and breathed in air that smelled like pine trees and distant rain. A taxi drove him through town, and Danny noticed people staring as they passed. He saw old neighbors pointing and whispering to each other. Mrs. Lopez from the corner store stood in her doorway with her hand over her mouth. Trevor Banks, who used to bully Danny in school, actually stepped back from the sidewalk as if afraid. Something was wrong. Danny could feel it in the way people looked at him with a mixture of pity and fear. The taxi driver kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror. Finally, the man spoke up. You going to the Carter place? The old mansion on Hillcrest Road? Danny nodded. That was my father's house. It's mine now. The driver's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Listen, buddy, I can only take you to the bottom of the hill. I won't drive up that driveway. Not for any amount of money? Why not? Danny asked, though he was starting to suspect the answer. You'll see when you get there, the driver said, and his voice dropped to almost a whisper. Strange things happen around that place. Have been happening for 14 years now, ever since your father passed. The taxi stopped at the base of Hillcrest Road, where the private driveway began its winding path up through dense woods. Danny paid the fare and watched the taxi speed away faster than necessary. He adjusted his duffel bag on his shoulder and started walking. The driveway was overgrown with weeds pushing up through cracks in the old asphalt. Vines covered the trees on either side, creating a tunnel of green that blocked out most of the afternoon sun. But there was something odd about these vines. They seemed to glow faintly with a pale blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Danny reached out to touch one of the vines and felt a tingle run up his arm. The vine was warm despite the cool air, and it seemed to shift slightly under his fingers as if it were alive and aware of his presence. He continued walking, and the glow grew stronger the further up the hill he went. The air itself felt different here, thicker somehow, charged with energy that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Then he heard it. A sound that started low and deep like distant thunder but grew into something else entirely. A roar that shook the ground beneath his feet and sent birds exploding from the trees in panic. It was followed by another roar and then a third, each one different in pitch and tone. Danny's military training kicked in, and his hand automatically went to his hip, where he would normally carry a weapon. But he was a civilian now, unarmed and alone on a driveway that led to a house that apparently terrified an entire town. He kept walking because whatever waited at the top of that hill was his inheritance. His father had left him everything, and Danny had traveled across half the galaxy to claim it. The mansion came into view as he rounded the final bend. It was exactly as he remembered it. 3 stories of old stone and timber with tall windows and a wide porch that wrapped around the entire first floor. Ivy covered much of the walls, but unlike normal ivy, this plant glowed with that same blue light, creating patterns that seemed almost deliberately beautiful. The front door was massive, made of dark wood with iron hinges and a knocker shaped like a lion's head. But Danny didn't need to knock because the door swung open before he could reach for it. She stood in the doorway and Danny forgot how to breathe. The woman was tall. Incredibly tall. At least 7 feet, with a frame that was both slender and powerful. Her skin had a faint shimmer to it, like she was reflecting light that Danny couldn't see. Silver hair fell past her shoulders, moving gently as if underwater despite the still air. Her eyes caught him completely. They were purple and gold, swirling together like galaxies in miniature, and they looked at him with an intensity that made him feel transparent. But it was her ears that confirmed what Danny already knew deep in his gut. They swept up into elegant points, marking her as something beyond human, something alien. Danny Carter, she said, and her voice was like music played on instruments that didn't exist on Earth. I have been waiting for you behind. Her Danny saw movement in the shadows of the entrance hall. Something large shifted in the darkness and then stepped into the light. The dragon was silver like liquid metal, flowing in the shape of a massive reptile. Its scales caught the light and reflected it in rainbows across the walls. Wings folded against its back stretched at least 20 feet from tip to tip. Its head was the size of Danny's entire torso, with eyes that glowed like molten gold. Then another dragon appeared. This one was blue so dark it was almost black. Electricity crackled between its teeth and ran along its spine in patterns that left after images in Danny's vision. It moved with fluid grace, belying its enormous size. The third dragon descended from somewhere above, landing on the porch beside the silver-haired woman. This one was gold and red like a sunset captured in scales. Heat radiated from its body, making the air shimmer, and Danny felt sweat immediately begin to form on his forehead. The woman stepped aside and gestured for Danny to enter. Welcome home, Danny Carter. My name is Kira, and I am a princess of Aldoria, though my world is very far from here. These are my companions, Silver Mist, who sees truth, Stormfang, who guards against lies, and Emberwing, who burns away deception. Danny stood frozen, trying to process what he was seeing. Dragons were mythology. Aliens existed, but none looked like this woman who seemed pulled from fantasy stories. Yet here they were, real and solid, and waiting for him to respond. Your father, Kira continued when Danny remained silent. Saved my entire world from extinction. When he died, he called across the stars and asked one favor: to guard his legacy until his son returned. I gave him my word, and I have kept it for 14 years. She smiled, and it transformed her face from beautiful to something almost divine. Come inside, Danny Carter. We have much to discuss, and time grows short. Danny took a deep breath, picked up his duffel bag, and walked through the door into a house he once knew, stepping into a life he could never have imagined. The entrance hall was exactly as Danny remembered, yet completely different at the same time. The furniture sat in the same positions his father had arranged years ago. The grandfather clock still stood in the corner, though its hands had stopped at midnight. Family portraits lined the wall, showing generations of Carters staring down with serious faces. But everything was pristine. No dust covered the surfaces. No cobwebs hung from the corners. The floor gleamed as if freshly polished. After 14 years of being supposedly abandoned, the house looked like someone had cleaned it just that morning. The three dragons moved through the space with surprising grace for creatures so large. Silver mist coiled near the base of the grand staircase, watching Danny with eyes that seemed to look through him, rather than at him. Stormfang prowled the perimeter of the room, blue sparks trailing from its claws and leaving scorch marks on the wooden floor. Emberwing settled near the fireplace, and the logs inside burst into flame without anyone touching them. Kira closed the door behind Danny, and the sound echoed through the hall like a bell. She moved past him, her steps silent on the floor, and gestured for him to follow. Come. There is much you need to see and understand. Danny followed her deeper into the house, passing through rooms filled with memories. The library, where his father used to read to him. The dining room, where they ate Sunday dinners. The study, where his father worked late into the night on projects Danny had been too young to understand. They stopped at a door at the end of a long hallway. Danny didn't remember this door. The wood was dark, almost black, and carved with symbols that hurt his eyes when he tried to focus on them. They seemed to shift and change shape, like they existed in more dimensions than his brain could process. Kira placed her hand flat against the door, and the symbols glowed bright gold. Your father built this room after he returned from Aldoria. It contains his life's work. Everything he learned from traveling the stars. Everything he discovered about the nature of reality itself. The door swung open without a sound, revealing a laboratory that looked like it belonged on a starship, not in an old mansion in a small town. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing equations and diagrams. Workbenches lined the walls, covered in tools and devices Danny couldn't name. In the center of the room stood a large circular platform with a ring of metal pillars surrounding it. Danny stepped inside and immediately felt the air change. It was charged with energy that made his skin tingle. The holographic displays flickered and suddenly showed his father's face. If you're seeing this, Danny, then I'm gone and you've finally come home. His father's voice filled the room, and Danny felt his throat tighten. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything before you left. Sorry I couldn't explain what I really did during my years away from Earth. But some secrets are too dangerous to share with a boy. You're a man now, a soldier. You've seen things and you're ready for the truth. The hologram shifted, showing a planet Danny had never seen. Purple oceans surrounded continents covered in silver forests. Cities rose into the sky like crystals reaching for the stars. This is Aldoria, his father continued. 28 years ago, I was part of the first deep space exploration mission. We went further than any human had gone before. We found Aldoria by accident when our ship had engine trouble and needed to land for repairs. The Aldorians are an old race, Danny. Older than humanity by thousands of years. They have technology that makes ours look like stone tools. The image changed, showing people tall and elegant with pointed ears and skin that shimmered. They looked exactly like Kira. They welcomed us, taught us, shared their knowledge freely because they believed all intelligent species should help each other grow. I spent 3 years there learning everything they would teach me. Then the plague came. The hologram now showed Aldorians lying in streets, their bodies turning gray and hard. It started in the outer settlements and spread fast, a disease that turned living flesh to stone. They tried everything, but nothing worked. Their best scientists couldn't find a cure. The plague was unlike anything they had encountered. Danny's father appeared again, and Danny could see the determination in his eyes. I worked with their medical teams for 8 months. We tested thousands of compounds, failed thousands of times, but finally we found it. A combination of Earth biology and Aldorian technology. A cure that saved them. The scene shifted to celebrations. Aldorians dancing in streets that had been empty. Children playing who would have died. Princess Kira personally came to thank me. She offered me anything I wanted. Wealth beyond measure. Technology that would make me the most powerful human alive. But I only asked for one thing. I asked her to promise that if I ever needed help, she would come. She gave me her word, and the word of an Aldorian princess is binding across time and space. His father's face grew serious. I came back to Earth with knowledge, Danny. Knowledge about physics and engineering that could change everything. I built things. Amazing things. But I kept them secret because humanity isn't ready. Too many people would use this technology for war, for control, for profit at any cost. The hologram pointed to the circular platform in the center of the room. This is a gateway, a doorway that can fold space itself. Step through it and you could travel to any point in the galaxy instantly. No ships needed. No years spent in cryosleep. Just walk through and arrive. Danny stared at the device, trying to comprehend what his father was telling him. When I got sick, I knew my time was short. I also knew that certain people would try to take everything after I died. Corporate interests, military officials, people who would use my work to harm others. So I called Kira. She came with her dragons, and I asked her to guard everything until you returned. She agreed. His father smiled sadly. I know this is a lot to put on you, son. But you're strong. You have a good heart like your mother did. You'll know what to do. Trust Kira. Trust the dragons. They will protect you as they protected my work. The hologram started to fade. I love you, Danny. I'm so proud of the man you've become. Change the galaxy, son. Make it better. That's all I ever wanted to do. The image disappeared, leaving Danny standing alone in the laboratory with tears running down his face. He hadn't cried when he got the news of his father's death. He had been too far away on a station orbiting a dead planet. By the time he could get leave to come home, the funeral was long over. He had buried his grief under duty and routine. Now it all came flooding out. He sank to his knees on the floor and sobbed for the father he had lost, for the years they could have had together, for all the conversations they would never have. He felt warmth surround him and realized Emberwing had moved close. The dragon's massive head rested gently against Danny's back. Then Silver Mist was there on his left and Stormfang on his right. The three dragons formed a protective circle around him. Kira knelt in front of him and took his hands in hers. Her touch was warm and comforting. Your father was the finest human I ever met. He saved millions of lives on my world. He could have demanded anything, but he only wanted friendship. That is true nobility. She waited until Danny could breathe normally again. The time for grief will come again, but now we must act quickly. There are those who know you have returned. They have been watching this house for years, waiting for this moment. They will come soon and they will try to take everything. Danny wiped his eyes and stood up. His military training pushed through the emotion. Who's coming? Kira's expression hardened. Everyone who wants to use your father's work for their own purposes. We have perhaps 3 days before they make their move. In that time, I must teach you everything. You must learn to use the gateway, to understand the technology, to defend what your father died protecting. Danny looked around the laboratory at devices that could change human history, at a doorway that could let people walk between stars, at the legacy his father had left him. Then we better get started, he said. The first attempt happened on the second night. Danny was deep in study, learning the complex mathematics behind the gateway technology, when Silver Mist's voice entered his mind with sudden urgency. They come. 3 vehicles approaching from the south road. Armed men. Danny looked up from the holographic display he had been examining. Kira was already moving toward the window, her movements fluid and quick. The dragons rose from their resting positions, tension visible in every line of their powerful bodies. How many? Kira asked. Silver Mist's eyes glowed brighter. 12 humans. They carry weapons designed to harm but not kill. They believe they can take this place by force. Danny moved to join Kira at the window. Through the darkness, he could see headlights winding up the driveway. 3 black vans moving slowly and carefully. His military experience told him these were professionals. The way they moved. The spacing between vehicles. Everything spoke of training and planning. Who are they? Danny asked. Kira's expression was cold. Nexus Corporation. They have come 4 times before. Each time we sent them away. Each time they return with new plans and more determination. The van stopped at the edge of the property about 50 yards from the house. Doors opened and men emerged wearing tactical gear. and carrying what looked like advanced stun weapons. A woman stepped out of the lead vehicle. Even from this distance, Danny could see she carried herself with authority. The woman pulled out a megaphone. Her voice echoed across the lawn. "Danny Carter, we know you're inside. We represent Nexus Corporation, and we have a very generous offer for you. All we want is to discuss purchasing your father's research. We're prepared to make you a very wealthy man." Danny started toward the door, but Kira's hand on his arm stopped him. "They lie. The moment you step outside, they will take you, force you to sign documents. If you refuse, they will make you disappear. How do you know? Because they tried it with your father 3 months before he died. They drugged him at a hospital, tried to get him to sign everything over while he was not in his right mind. I had to break him out." Kira's eyes flashed with anger at the memory. "Your father reported them, but they have powerful friends. Nothing happened to them." The woman with the megaphone called out again. "Mr. Carter, we're not going away. You can't hide in there forever. Be reasonable. Talk to us." Stormfang growled and electricity crackled along its spine. "Let me show them what happens to those who threaten our charges." "Not yet," Kira said. "We give them one chance to leave peacefully." She opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. The glowing vines that covered the house suddenly blazed brighter, creating a display of light that made the armed men step back nervously. The 3 dragons moved to flank her, Silver Mist on her left shimmering like mercury, Stormfang on her right crackling with barely contained energy. Emberwing landed on the roof above, spreading its wings wide and bathing the scene in flickering firelight. The effect was dramatic and terrifying. The armed men raised their weapons, but their hands shook visibly. The woman with the megaphone stood frozen, staring up at creatures that shouldn't exist. Kira's voice rang out clear and commanding. "You trespass on protected ground. Leave now and do not return. This is your only warning." One of the men fired his weapon. The stun blast hit Silver Mist directly in the chest and did absolutely nothing. The dragon didn't even flinch. Instead, Silver Mist opened its mouth and breathed out a cloud of silver mist that rolled across the lawn faster than the men could run. When the mist touched them, they froze. Not from cold or fear, but from something else entirely. Danny watched as one man tried to pull the trigger on his weapon, but his hand wouldn't obey. Another tried to run, but his legs refused to move. They were all conscious, all aware, but completely paralyzed. The woman dropped her megaphone and tried to back toward her vehicle, but the mist caught her too. She stood like a statue, her eyes wide with terror, but her body completely locked. Kira walked down the porch steps and approached the paralyzed group. "You will remember this moment. You will remember that there are forces in this universe beyond your understanding or control. Tell your employers that Danny Carter is under the protection of Aldoria. Tell them that any further attempts will be met with more than paralysis." She made a gesture and the mist began to retreat. As it left their bodies, the men and woman could move again. They stumbled backward, falling over each other in their panic to reach the vehicles. Weapons were abandoned on the lawn. The woman didn't even try to retrieve her megaphone. The vans started up and raced back down the driveway faster than they had come. Taillights disappeared into the darkness, leaving only abandoned equipment and tire tracks in the grass. Danny stepped onto the porch. That was incredible. What did Silver Mist do to them? A temporary paralysis that affects the connection between mind and body, Kira explained. It causes no permanent harm, but the experience is quite unpleasant. They will think twice before returning. Will they come back? Yes, Nexus is not the only threat. There are others who want what your father built. Government agencies, foreign powers, criminal organizations. Your father's work is valuable beyond measure, and many people believe they have the right to take it. Danny looked at the abandoned weapons scattered across his lawn. "How long have you been dealing with this?" 14 years, Kira said quietly. "The first attempt came 1 week after your father's funeral. A lawyer claiming the estate had debts that must be paid immediately. When I refused to allow access, he became aggressive. Stormfang encouraged him to leave. She walked back toward the house and Danny followed. Then came the thieves. People trying to break in at night. We stopped them all, but word spread. The town became afraid. They saw the dragons, heard the roars. Stories grew wilder with each telling. Is that why everyone in town looked at me like I was crazy for coming here?" Kira nodded. "They believe this place is cursed, haunted, dangerous. In a way, they are correct. It is dangerous for those who come with ill intent. But for you it is home and it is your inheritance. They returned to the laboratory where the holographic displays still floated, showing equations and diagrams. Danny looked at the gateway platform in the center of the room. My father said humanity isn't ready for this technology. Maybe he was right. Look what's happening already. People trying to steal it, to use it for profit or power. Kira touched one of the displays and it shifted, showing new information. Your father struggled with this question every day. He wanted to help humanity advance, but he feared what they would do with advanced technology before they were spiritually ready for it. What do you think? Danny asked. You've seen humanity at its worst these past 14 years. Kira was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. I have seen humans driven by greed and fear, but I also knew your father. I know there are humans capable of great wisdom and compassion. The question is not whether humanity deserves this technology. The question is whether you can protect it until the right time comes to share it. Danny sank into a chair, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. I'm just one person. How am I supposed to protect all of this? You are not alone. Kira gestured to the dragons who had followed them inside. We have given our word to your father. We will stay as long as you need us, and I will teach you everything I know. Not just about the technology, but about defense, about diplomacy, about knowing who to trust. Emberwing moved closer to Danny, its massive head level with his. The dragon's eyes were like pools of liquid fire. Your father had great courage. That courage lives in you as well. We see it. Danny reached out hesitantly and touched the dragon's scaled snout. It was warm, like touching heated stone, but smooth as glass. Thank you, all of you, for protecting my father's work. For staying all these years, Kira smiled. We honor our debts. But more than that, we have come to care for this place and what it represents. Your father dreamed of a future where humans and Eldorians worked together, where knowledge was shared freely and used wisely. That dream is worth protecting. Danny stood up, feeling determination replace uncertainty. Then let's make sure it survives. Teach me everything. I'll learn as fast as I can. Good, Kira said, because Nexus was just the first test. The real challenges are yet to come. 3 days of intensive training left Danny exhausted but exhilarated. Kira proved to be a demanding but brilliant teacher. She taught him the principles behind the gateway technology, how it folded space by manipulating gravitational fields at a quantum level, how the pillars around the platform created a stable field that prevented the devastating effects of sudden dimensional shifts. Danny learned that his father had built in extensive safety protocols. The gateway wouldn't activate unless specific conditions were met. Temperature within acceptable range, air pressure stable, no biological matter in the transition field except what was meant to travel. His father had thought of everything, but the technology was only part of Danny's education. Kira also taught him about Eldorian culture and history, about the codes of honor that governed their society, about why a promise made by an Eldorian princess was considered unbreakable. On my world, we believe that words have power, Kira explained as they sat in the library. Not metaphorical power, but actual tangible force. When I give my word, I bind a part of my essence to that promise. To break it would literally diminish who I am. That's why you stayed all these years, Danny said. Not just out of gratitude, but because you couldn't leave without breaking your word. Both are true. I'm grateful to your father, and I am bound by my promise. The two are not separate for me. Kira pulled an ancient book from the shelf. It was bound in material that looked like leather but shimmered with colors that shifted as it moved. This is the history of the royal family of Aldoria. Your father gave me his journals to read so I could understand humans better. I want you to read this so you can understand my people. Danny took the book carefully. The moment his fingers touched it, he felt warmth spread through his hands. Words appeared on the cover in English, though he suspected they were actually Aldorian and the book was translating itself somehow. The Chronicles of Starlight and Stone, he read aloud. My family's history going back 3,000 years, Kira said. You don't need to read it all. But there are sections marked that explain our relationship with dragons, why they choose to bond with certain individuals, what that bond means. Danny opened the book and immediately became absorbed. The text described how dragons were not pets or servants, but partners. Ancient beings with intelligence that rivaled or exceeded most humanoid species. They chose to bond with individuals they deemed worthy, individuals who possessed qualities like courage, wisdom, or compassion. The bond was mutual. The dragon gained a companion who could help them navigate social structures and political situations they found tedious. The bonded individual gained a protector and advisor whose perspective spanned centuries. Silvermist, Stormfang, and Emberwing chose to bond with me when I was very young, Kira explained. They saw something in me that suggested I would grow into someone worth their time. They have never regretted that choice, and neither have I. Do they ever bond with humans? Danny asked. Kira's expression became unreadable. Very rarely. Dragons are careful about who they choose. Humans live such short lives compared to dragons who can survive thousands of years. The pain of loss when the bonded partner dies is intense. Most dragons will only bond once or twice in their entire existence. Over the following days, Danny noticed the dragons watching him closely. Silvermist would often be present during his study sessions, though the dragon never spoke. Stormfang followed him when he walked the grounds in the evening. Emberwing took to sleeping near Danny's bedroom door like a guardian. On the 7th day after his arrival, Danny woke to find Silvermist sitting beside his bed. The dragon's massive head rested on the edge of the mattress, and those golden eyes stared directly into Danny's. Your father asked us to protect his work. Silvermist's voice entered Danny's mind. But that duty ends when you take full control of the estate. We have fulfilled our promise to him. Danny sat up slowly. Are you leaving? That depends on you. Silvermist's gaze intensified. Your father was worthy of our respect and protection, but he was not bonded to us. We served him out of debt to Princess Kira. You are different. Different how? You carry his courage, but you also have something he lacked. You have lived among warriors. You understand sacrifice and duty not as abstract concepts but as daily reality. You have the heart of a protector. The dragon shifted position, moving closer. Emberwing, Stormfang, and I have discussed this at length. We would offer you something we have never offered a human before. Danny's heart raced. What are you offering? A bond. Not with all three of us, as that would be too much for a human mind to process. But one of us could bond with you if you prove willing and worthy. The bond would give you abilities beyond normal human limits. Enhanced strength. Faster healing. The ability to sense danger. But it would also mean responsibility. A bonded dragon is not a pet to command. We would be partners. Equals. Before Danny could respond, Kira appeared in the doorway. She looked shocked. Silvermist, what are you doing? You can't just offer a bond without your permission? Silvermist turned to face the princess. With respect, Kira, you do not command us in this. The choice of bonding is ours alone to make. Kira's expression shifted from shock to concern. Danny, bonding with a dragon is not something to take lightly. It will change you fundamentally. Your lifespan will increase dramatically. You will be neither fully human nor fully dragon, but something in between. You cannot undo it. Danny looked between Kira and the dragon. Why now? Why offer this to me? Emberwing entered the room, followed by Stormfang. The three dragons surrounded Danny's bed. Emberwing spoke next, its voice like crackling flames in Danny's mind. Because greater threats are coming. Nexus Corporation was nothing. A minor annoyance. But there are others who know about the gateway. Military forces. Intelligence agencies. Even other alien races who would not be as honorable as Eldorians. Your father kept them all at bay through secrecy and misdirection, but you have returned and your presence has been noted. The protection will escalate. Stormfang added its voice to the conversation. A bonded human with dragon gifts would be far more capable of defending this place. More capable of deciding when and how to use your father's technology. The bond would give you wisdom beyond your years. Danny's mind raced. This was beyond anything he had imagined. Bonding with a dragon would mean giving up any chance at a normal life. He would become something other. Something that would outlive everyone he knew. His few remaining friends from the military. The distant relatives he barely kept in touch with. Everyone would age and die while he remained. But what was the alternative? Hide in this house for the rest of his life, guarding technology he barely understood. Wait for someone with enough resources and determination to finally breach their defenses? Watch as his father's dream of helping humanity died because he was too afraid to take responsibility? If I agree, Danny said slowly. Which of you would bond with me? The three dragons looked at each other in silent communication. Finally, Silvermist spoke. That would be determined through a trial. Each of us would test you differently. Your choice of trial would indicate which dragon suits you best. Emberwing tests courage through fire. Stormfang tests will through storm. I test truth through reflection. And if I fail the trial, you would not die, Kira interjected quickly. The trials are challenging but not meant to be lethal. Failure would simply mean you are not ready. You could try again later or choose not to bond at all. Danny stood up and walked to the window. Dawn was breaking over the property. The glowing vines were fading as natural light replaced their illumination. His house, this technology, this impossible situation. His father had carried this burden alone until it killed him. Danny didn't have to make the same mistake. He turned back to face the dragons. I'll do it. I'll take the trial. But I need to understand what I'm choosing. What happens during a bonding? Silver mist rose to full height, nearly touching the ceiling. The chosen dragon shares part of their essence with you. You share part of your humanity with them. The two blend, creating a connection that exists beyond normal understanding. We will feel what you feel, know what you know, but your mind remains your own. Your choices remain yours. We simply walk the same path together. When do we start? Tonight, Emberwing said. At midnight, when the barriers between worlds are thinnest, you will go to the gateway platform. One of us will be waiting. The trial will begin. Kira stepped forward and took Danny's hands. Are you certain about this? Once the trial begins, you must see it through to the end. Danny met her eyes and saw genuine concern there. This alien princess who had given 14 years of her life to honor a debt to his father. She cared about what happened to him. I'm certain, he said. My father protected this technology alone. He died alone. I won't make that mistake. If bonding with a dragon gives me the strength to carry this burden, then I'll do it. Kira pulled him into an embrace. Then may the stars guide you through whatever comes.